originally wrote this talk, I was going to call it The Advantages of Being a Misfit. And over the course of writing the talk, I had a dear friend read it, and she came away shaking her head, and she said, "This doesn't make sense. The thesis of your talk is not that you were a misfit, but that actually the things that normally would make you a misfit, in your case, were totally and completely normal. The reality is that you weren't a misfit, or at least that you didn't understand that you were a misfit. And if you don't understand it, then you can't be one." So the first thing that I want to say is that I discovered two things about myself when I was 12 that have totally shaped my life today. And the first is that I didn't like school, and the second is that I'm sexually attracted to men. And that makes me a misfit in many ways. Yet it was only 2 months ago that I realized for the first time that being gay, and worse, being a dropout, was actually a thing that might be perceived negatively by society. This is me when I was 12, and at the end of 5th grade, I told my parents that I didn't want to go to school, and I said, I don't want to spend time doing boring dittos when I could go out and play in the creek behind my house, or play with Legos, or go volunteer in my community. And my mom, a public school teacher, my dad, an engineer, weren't the biggest fans of this idea, but they said, hey, it's your life. If you want to go out and make your own decisions, the worst thing that could possibly happen is that you might go back to school. So I became an unschooler, which is a self-directed form of homeschooling. My parents weren't directly teaching me. I wasn't following any prescribed curriculum. I had a direct hand in creating and curating my own education. And that first year as an unschooler, we had a collaborative art history class, and I was assigned to do a report on Henry Matisse to present to the class. And I distinctly recall Googling Pink Nude, the name of one of his paintings, with absolutely no idea that I would end up with explicit search results. Fortunately, my mom was out that afternoon, and I spent the time poking around the internet, finding out that there were both pink nudes in the male and female form. And a bit more exploration revealed that I was more interested in nude men than nude women. And what's funny is that I didn't make much of either of these things at the time. Neither the liking men nor the leaving school really had a profound effect on me. Although most of society would consider both of these things non-standard, it never seemed out of the ordinary. I never felt any pressure to be straight or any pressure to be an academic success. This summer, I ended up dating a guy. This is not a picture of us, but we don't actually have a picture together. Which I suppose tells you how the relationship ended, who had really quite the opposite experience of me. And instead of given the freedom to flourish and grow in the ways that he wanted, he felt pressure to both be an academic success and be a straight male. He grew up all throughout high school and college as straight until he couldn't stand lying to himself any longer, and came out after his junior year of college. But he didn't just come out. He purposely failed all of his college classes junior years and got Fs so that, quote, being gay wouldn't be the thing that he hated most about himself. And he said this to me, and I had to take a second to process what he said and verify that I'd heard what he said correctly. That being an academic failure was worse to him than being gay. And that was really fascinating to me. So I started thinking, wow, how can I empathize with this experience? It's so entirely different than my own. As I began to think about the gravity of what I said, I started to realize that there was a link between a lack of my emotional trauma dating men and not going to middle school or high school. Most people go through school feeling a lot of pressure to be an academic success. And there was a college humor video that came out this week, and I had to grab this clip from it, which is this.
Growing up, I based my self-worth on my ability to get good grades.
Which is never how I measured my self-worth. I measured my self-worth by my own expectations. I had to set out and meet those expectations. And because I lived in an environment where there were not expectations, my parents didn't set them out for me, I wasn't in school, I didn't have a TV, I was not religious, by removing those expectations, I had to create the expectations for myself. And the statement that this young man made gave me a lot of respect for him, seeing that he's now, a year later, a calm and collective individual, having had such issues with school and sexuality is really beautiful. The fact that he had the courage to follow his heart and come out, despite being entrenched in a school system, speaks wonders about the great things he'll do in the future. But still I wondered, would I be able to empathize? The reaction his families and friends had to him coming out, both as gay and an academic failure, were not entirely positive, really as you might expect. And thinking about my own life, I realized that I've never really faced any adversity, either for being gay or for being a dropout. Sure, people ask me questions like, are you sure this isn't just a phase, or do you think you'll ever go back to college? But I've never felt discriminated against. The worst reaction I ever had to announcing my first boyfriend on Facebook, which was a friend emailing me asking, really? Which I think had a little bit more to do with the fact that the person I was calling my boyfriend was a guy that I'd never met who lived in the Netherlands, and a lot less to do with the fact that it was a man. And to my knowledge, I've never lost out on opportunities because I'm a gay dropout. And in fact, being a gay dropout has distinctly worked to my advantage. I can count numerous opportunities, from interviews that I've done for my book to being able to crash TED at Long Beach, that have happened specifically because I'm queer and specifically because I'm a dropout. I mentioned the idea to my mom sometime this fall that there might be a pink mafia, a sort of group of queer people of all shades that help each other out. And her first response was, "So who'd you sleep with?" And the answer is no one. People help each other out because of similar experiences, just as people help each other out because they've gone to the same college and are part of the same alumni network. I've noticed that some of the most powerful stories and talks that I see are ones that build the most rapport with the reader, with the audience, and mention something about death. So I'm going to relate one of the few near-death experiences that I have that doesn't actually involve myself. Last fall, I found an acquaintance dead in his room. He died from suffocation, covering his own head with a plastic bag. And the following week, people would ask, "How was your weekend?" And I would respond truthfully, relating that story. And what surprised me is that nearly everyone responded in this way. They said, "You're gay. You must know what it's like to want to kill yourself." And I was like, "No, I really don't know what that's like. I've honestly never been in a place to think about killing myself." But I was amazed that people assume that just because I'm a misfit, just because I'm non-standard, just because I have a unique experience, that there must be a reason to want to die. This summer, my friends began talking about their therapist, and I realized that I didn't have one. And I wondered if I needed one. And I thought, sure, one wouldn't hurt, but what is the emotional trauma that I really have to deal with? Did I come away from childhood with a lot of baggage about being gay? Or did I escape that? My entire thesis, all of my life right now, is dedicated to the notion that you can gain the same education outside school that you can in school. I've got a book coming out in spring called Hacking Your Education about this, where we develop and run educational programs to enable people to learn how to learn outside of school. And this is a great and fulfilling way to lead life. And I've never asserted that unschooling or not going to school is better than school. But after this young man that I was dating told me about the emotional trauma that he faced, I started to wonder, for the first time, it might be. Might it be that it's actually better to not go to school? Was it because I wasn't part of the standardized system that I escaped without the emotional problems that plagued most queer people? There might be a distinct advantage to not going to school, having to define your own values, to live without expectation, and to be okay with being yourself. What's funny is that probably if I had gone to school, I would have figured out that I was gay a lot earlier. I would have been surrounded by young guys all getting girlfriends. I might have caught myself sneaking glances at naked guys in the locker room. I probably would have been picked on for being bad at sports. I would have been called gay. I would have had people asking me who I was going to take to prom. As it was, I figured out that I was gay much, much later. I didn't figure out I was gay until I went to college. I knew that I liked men, sure, but I didn't know that that meant that I was gay. In a town of 6,000 people in the Central Valley of California, where I grew up, I had no gay role models. I didn't even know that being a gay was a thing that you could do. When I finally got to college, I finally had a pool of men to date. As an unschooler, no one dated. We had a social group of about 30 people, but in 30 people, no one dates. It's just way too fucking awkward. And neither of my parents dated in high school, so they didn't think it was weird that I wasn't getting a girlfriend. So there was no external pressure for me to enter a mature stage of my life where I'd start going after girls. I recall when I was 17, I spent a summer at UCLA, and one of my roommates that summer asked me for the first time if I was gay. My response was I didn't know. I proceeded to tell him about how I'd masturbated with my friends in middle school and high school, but that I wasn't emotionally attracted to them, and so I didn't think that made me gay. I thought the emotional attraction was the tipping point. The scientific literature I'd read indicated that 37% of American males have achieved orgasm with a member of the same sex. That is actually a true statistic, if you're wondering. And that jacking off with my friends didn't seem to be the deciding factor. I said, I could be, maybe, who knows? I'm open to the possibility. Of course, this was way more information than he wanted. He was looking for a simple yes or no answer. Like I mentioned, neither of my parents dated throughout high school, and so I was just told, oh, you're a late bloomer like I was. And that seemed like a pretty reasonable assumption. But what's crazy to me is, unlike every gay man that I know, I was never tormented for not having a girlfriend. I never wished I was straight. I never felt guilty for watching gay porn. And today I have a pretty decent dating life. Not dating in high school and never going to prom doesn't seem to have negatively impacted me. In fact, I think not going to school has really, really worked to my advantage. My thesis is that maybe, just maybe, there's a distinct advantage to being a misfit. That being a gay dropout has worked to my advantage, but not that you have to drop out of school or start dating men or to experience the effect that I'm describing. We all have things that make us misfits, whether that's the fact that you might have been raised by a single parent, or that you don't eat lactose. Whatever makes you a misfit, you can use it to your advantage. Thinking back, people told me I was weird along the way, but I guess I didn't hear it. Or the people who said that it wasn't important, that I just thought that it didn't matter. I think that everyone should be able to live free of their expectations. It's really an amazing thing that I've learned to write my own path, to define my own values, and to construct my own nature. And I think that's happened because I stepped outside of the system. And because I stepped outside of the system, the expectation was not that there was a set of predefined variables that I had to meet, but rather that I had to make those variables up for myself. I was taught that what other people think is not important. School would have taught me that what other people think is really, really important. School would have taught me that I was bad for a lot of reasons, that I didn't do so well on the SAT, that I wanted to date men, and instead I wasn't. I wasn't taught those things. And it's simply a matter of not being taught those things. One of the most common things that people tell me is, well, unschooling worked for you, but admit that it won't work for everybody else. And in some ways, that's a compliment, right? In the parlance of public school, that's to say I'm gifted. But at the same time, it's assuming that everybody else in the world needs to be tested and guided and shaped and molded like a bag of flour. And I just don't think that's the case. I certainly don't think it's true that you could take everyone who's in school right now, delete school from the system, throw them out into the streets, and expect everyone to magically learn. That would not be true. But I think that's because people have had their motivation and their initiative and their curiosity and their creativity systematically stamped out of them for 12 years. If you took the average person and took them out of school after 6th grade, or better yet, didn't send them at all, they'd probably end up just like me. And suddenly the question would be the opposite. Companies wouldn't be having trouble finding people who are creative and motivated. They'd be concerned about whether their new employees could meet deadlines, which is really a better problem to have, because that's a skill that's much more easily trainable. As it stands, we're training skills out of people. The whole point here is that you need to be authentic, and that you have to construct your own value system. We have this list of what it means to be a good person, what it means to be successful in society. And it starts something with going to kindergarten and getting good grades and pleasing your teachers, and moves on down the line to going to middle school and high school and taking a hot girl to prom and getting good grades on the SAT. And then maybe you go to college and get a job, hopefully at a nice fancy place like Bain or McKinsey, or maybe if you're feeling particularly social, Teach for America. But the same thing happens. These are all hoops that we jump through. And it's fine if you want to jump through those hoops, to continue on down the line and get promotions, to buy a house, to buy a fancy car, travel abroad, buy a second house, take out a mortgage. But the problem here is that most of the time that we go jumping through those hoops, we aren't the ones that have defined what the hoops are. Someone else has set up those hoops for us. And for me, having been outside of the system, I've had to define those hoops for myself. I know that for me, what makes me happy is not material things. It's not getting to travel a lot. Sure, that's lots of fun, but at the core, what really makes me happy is living a happy, healthy life, and knowing that I'm allowing others to live a happier and healthier life because of me. If you don't realize that people are judging you, you're never going to feel judged. Unschooling not only removed me from judgment, but it forced me to internally assess myself, as opposed to assessing myself by external validation. It forced me to decide for myself what I valued. It allowed me to be free from societal expectations and to define my own life. And I hope that that's an experience that everyone can one day have. To have the opportunity to design your own life, to define your expectations. I think that the world is ultimately much larger than we can imagine. If we can define what's in it, and that means that maybe, just maybe, we might be larger than we can imagine. Thank you.